How many of you have already started your New Year's resolutions? Nobody? Oh, sure, there are a few of you. How many of you have the same resolutions this year that you had last year? How does that happen? Every year I have the same resolution. Every year I come back to the end of the year and I go, well, I didn't quite make the mark, so I'm going to try it again, that same resolution. A New Year's resolution is something that goes in one year and out the other. Right? The past, the present, and the future walked into a bar. It was tense. So if you're not satisfied with your New Year's resolution from last year and you're trying to start over again this year, there is some good news. In case you don't make it past January 10th, right, and you're still on that treadmill and not getting anywhere, you have two opportunities to start over. First of all, January 14th is the Orthodox Christian New Year. It goes back to the old calendar, right? So you have until January 14th to get it right. And if you don't get it then February 8th is the Chinese New Year. So if you have struck out by then, I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So a resolution is a firm decision to do something or to not do something, right? It's you decide you're going to lose weight in 2018. You're going to lose 10 pounds in 2018. You're going to quit smoking in 2018. You're going to tell your significant other, I love you more in 2018. You're going to break up in a relationship that is no longer serving you in 2018. You're going to get a better job in 2018. Oh, the list goes on and on. The resolutions go on and on. But a resolution is also already defeated because it is a resolution. You've already failed at something. So you're trying to make it right by resolving to do it better the next time. So there was a December 27th article in USA Today that I want to share with you. I just fell in love with this article. You may have heard of Jeff Steibel. He's one of the vice chairs of Dun & Bradstreet. He's also an author. He wrote a book that you may recognize, about brain and thoughts and brain trust. He is an entrepreneur, and he's a brain scientist. And he did some research, and according to this article, New Year's resolutions have a 90% failure rate. In other words, only 10% of us will fulfill our resolutions by the end of this year or next year. Because he said it reinforces failure. It labels something a resolution that you've already failed at before. So we're setting ourselves up for failure. He said something we failed to do like last year in 2015, 2014, 2013, we're trying to make amends for it by piling more on top of that list of to-dos that we didn't do. He says the brain is wired for short-term solutions. So the brain makes possible for you to make these imaginary resolutions and gives you a hit of dopamine every time you do. So if you really want to get high, make a long list of resolutions. He says that when he studied the brain, he realized that the brain has no distinction between what you say you're going to do and what you do. So even if you imagine it, you still get that hit of dopamine. He says the brain knows that if it was important, you'd be doing it anyway. So telling your brain that you're going to exercise more and make that a top priority doesn't work because the brain is aware that you've placed more importance on sitting in front of the television. Brains aren't wired for the long game. He says humanity evolved as short-term thinkers. Think about it. Survival as a day-to-day affair, right? Wake up, find food. How many of you do that? Wake up, find food, right? Still that old brain, that old reptile brain. Wake up, find food, avoid predators. How many of you do that? Avoid predators. Secure shelter. Those are the four things our short-term brain is geared for, according to Jeff Steibel. So, because of that, we get pleasure out of just accomplishing those few things every single day. That makes it difficult for us to stick to a resolution because those are short-term and resolutions are long-term. So that's why ice cream is preferable to exercise, right? I'd rather have a hit of dopamine for getting some ice cream than having to do a workout on my treadmill. He says it's a scientific fact that nature abhors a vacuum, and Aristotle proved this point. He concluded that nature requires every empty space to be filled, even if it's colorless or odorless. You can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it. Nature fills the vacuum. So how does that work for resolutions? It's the same principle in our spiritual lives. When we realize we aren't living our best lives, we try to create something, a space for something we want. So we take away, or we say we're going to resolve to not do this anymore. But we leave an empty space for something else to come in. And if we don't set our intentions for the right thing that we really want in our life to fill that void, guess what's going to fill the void? So I resolved to lose 10 pounds this year, and I don't make a plan and set my intentions to fill it with something positive. Guess what's going to happen next year? It's 20 pounds. Right? So I'm right back where I started from. It's in and out, in one year and out the other. So how do we manage this? Well, we believe that it's not a resolution that we need. Later on, you'll experience what we call the burning bowl ceremony. It's a way of releasing what no longer serves you and filling it with what you really want, what you really desire. And next Sunday, Nian will walk us through the white stone ceremony, where you create for yourself a new name, a new beginning, a new purpose. So as soon as you get rid of the old ways of being and thinking, nature creates this vacuum, like, and sucks in whatever is out there. So I'm going to give you a good example. One year during the burning bowl ceremony, after I wrote down the things that I no longer wanted to carry forward in the new year, I picked up a card, and you'll get a card. I picked up the angel card, and it said strength. And I go, great, I'm already strong. I don't even need to work at that. This will be easy, piece of cake. Everything, I didn't fill that space with what I really wanted. What do I want in the way of strength in my life? What could be strengthened in my life? So I just left it sitting there. I put down what I didn't want on the little litmus paper, and it caught fire, and it was, purified in the fire, let that go. And I left a space without setting my intention. And everything that could test my strength came up that year. Everything. It rocked me in so many different ways. I learned a powerful lesson. But there's also another part of that lesson, and that is that once you set your intentions, be prepared for everything that you ask for, to flex those muscles so you can be ready for it. So when you pray for something, wisdom, for example, you want to make better choices, better decisions. Everything that will come your way to test your ability to make right choices. So we empty ourselves of one vice, and if we don't set our intentions to replace that, we fill it with another. I've never smoked, but let's say my vice was smoking, and I decided that in 2018, I'm going to give up cigarettes. But I don't put anything in its place. And some people, when they give up smoking, gain weight. So guess what? I start eating more. So what have I put in the place of the vice? Another vice, right? Because I didn't set my intentions on what I want to fill that void. So it's like trading one habit for another. So in order to really live up to your resolutions, when you practice the burning bowl ceremony today, I want you to think about, what is it that you do want? It's easy to focus on what you don't want, but what is it that you do want? If you're going to make a change by letting go of what you don't want, you have to be ready to replace it with what you do want. Out with the old, in with the new. In Philippians, the Apostle Paul is talking to the church in Philippi. The 3rd chapter, the 13th through the 14th verses, he says, "No, dear brothers and sisters, I am not all I should be, but but I am focusing all my energy on this one thing, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead. I strain to reach the end of the race and receive the prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us to heaven, calling us to our higher consciousness, our higher state of being. So what is he saying? He's forgetting the past, but he's filling it with the intention that something better is on its way. When I first learned to pray affirmatively, as we do in unity, I learned to always end my prayer with this or something better. This or something better. I don't want to limit myself to my little limited ideas because I know God's ideas are much bigger than mine. Wayne Dyer said, you leave old habits behind by starting out with the thought, I release the need for this in my life. So when you release the need for this in your life, you leave a void. Put something in that you do want in your life. In Isaiah, the 43rd chapter, the 18th through the 19th verses, we read, forget the former things. Do not consider the past. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. You may be having a wilderness or a desert experience in your life. Put it in its proper place. There's nothing wrong with looking back as long as you don't stay there in the past. Look back with a positive glance over where you've come from, where you've been, and how you got to where you are today. But don't get stuck looking back. There's a story in Genesis, the 19th chapter, about Lot and his wife. Some of you may have heard this story. The textbook we use in Unity, the Bible, is full of stories that relate to our everyday life. As it turns out, Lot and his wife and their 2 daughters were having to leave their home in Sodom because it was a bad place, not a good place to raise children. And of course it was home. How many of you have ever had to leave home and you really didn't want to leave home? Maybe you moved to another city, a new house, a new location. Sure, all of us have had that experience. So they were told to not look back. Well, Lot and the girls had no problem with that. They were ready to go. But apparently something about the old place still nagged at Lot's wife. And she turned and she looked back. And as the story is told, she turned into a pillar of salt. Now, when I was a child, I took that story very literally. And I thought, wow, just by looking back, she was frozen in a pillar of salt. But you know the qualities of salt, right? Salt is used as a preservative. Salt is also bitter to the taste. So the way I interpret the story is by focusing on the past and dwelling in the past and not filling the void that would be left behind once she left her home with something positive to look forward to, she got stuck in the past. How many of you have ever been stuck in the past? A relationship, a job, a house, a community, what once was, what you used to do, what you used to have, where you used to be. And when you get stuck in those places, it's kind of hard to move forward. You cannot go forward with one foot in the back and the other one in the front. You're paralyzed, frozen in place. Out with the old, in with the new. Don't forget about the old, because the old is what got you here. Just don't get stuck in it. Don't dwell on it. So in Unity, we have this practice for those of you who are new, and this is your first time at the Burning Bowl ceremony, where we release what no longer serves our highest and best good and replace it with what we want to carry forward in the new year. So what might that look like? Ephesians, the 4th chapter, the 31st through the 32nd verse says, let all the bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, as Christ forgave you. So perhaps we want to let go of the anger, the bitterness, the resentment, the things we've been holding on to that no longer serve us or anyone else, and replace that with loving kindness. Fill the void. In Forrest Gump, he says, my mama says you've got to put the past behind you before you can move on. And that's so true. Not letting go of old stuff not releasing what no longer serves you, is the same as driving through life with a flat tire. Not stopping to change it, hoping it will fix itself, pretending that the ride is smooth and knowing that it isn't, until one day it gets so loud and so bumpy that you're forced to stop, take a look, and get help, and call AAA or whatever your roadside service is. So how many of us are living our lives like we're driving around on a flat tire, thinking it's going to fix itself, right? I don't need to change anything. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And as the saying goes, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. I'll say that again for those of you who need me to take it a little slower. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten.